So if it goes great, not to worry about the concussion. Doesn't go too good, worry about the concussion. And we're also going to be sure I can get down this thing right so I don't fall again. So I'm here to talk to you about something, connect your community dots. And when you saw this title, you must have thought, really? She could have come up with something a little catchier, right? Connect the dots is probably one of the most used idioms, metaphors in the English language, which is really funny too for me because English is my second language. But I wanted you to think about community dots in a couple of different ways. So when we think about these community dots, I wanted you to ask yourself, have you ever thought about the fact that yes, it's been used in speeches, yes, it's been used in lots of, actually, TED Talks. I think there's even a TED event that's been called that. But I want you to think about, have you ever thought that connecting community dots was the way to address some of the biggest challenges that our communities face? Let me show you something. This is a word cloud. Somewhere in there, you're going to see the thing that you are most passionate about, the thing that is your vocation, your avocation, the things that you dream about, the things that you are on a board for, that you volunteer for. And I can tell you that those are all things that Forsyth County, North Carolina is grappling with. It is likely that it is something that most communities are grappling with. These are our issues. These are our needs. This is what our families, our friends, our neighbors, we are struggling with. And here's what tends to happen. We wake up and we look at this and we say, there has to be something we can do about this. I listen all the time. I work for Forsyth Futures, and this is actually really, truly also what my calendar looks like on any given day. I'm not kidding. Hour to hour, my job is any one of these things, along with the amazing people I work at Forsyth Futures with. Forsyth Futures is a very unique, special nonprofit in Forsyth County. We are a nonprofit that's designed to do local data and research. And a big part of the work is always, are we making progress? Is the data getting any better? Is the crime rate any better? Are we doing better in high school graduation? Are we doing better in reading? And we either lead this or we support others in our community who are doing that. And the answer is always, well, it depends on how you look at it. It depends on what year it is. It depends on how we're doing. And we're making some gains. But after spending my very first year at Forsyth Futures in 2009, looking up at all those numbers and looking at numbers and looking at numbers, and then I would get these phone calls the day after some headline in the Winston-Salem Journal or in the evening news where people were just outraged about how we weren't doing well in one of these. I would get this next thing. Why aren't we doing something about this? Or I would get this. So I happened to be visiting this city, and they're doing this thing about one of these challenges. And so why aren't we doing that in Forsyth County? And the answer I came up with, I started thinking more and more, and I started doing some more research. A different kind of research is we are. And we're doing a lot. There are over 2,400 nonprofit organizations registered just right here in Forsyth County. There are over 40,000 in the state of North Carolina. There are over 1 million in the United States. And that doesn't even take into account maybe the multiple things that those organizations are trying to do. It doesn't take into account what individuals are trying to do, what some of our 350,000 faith-based organizations in the nation are trying to do, with some 450 of them right here in Forsyth County. It doesn't take into account everything that all of us are trying to do. So if we're doing so much, how come we're not getting the kinds of gains? We're not solving some of these things the way that we know we can, the way that we're dreaming we can. And so I started doing a little bit more homework, and it all started with a conversation with some folks in behavioral and mental health. One of my professions has been to be a psychologist, in addition to being a numbers person. And so I started working with mental health folks about the need in our community. And so I started doing my research online, and I started going to meetings, and I started talking to people. And so I started to collect what I call the dots that are associated with the issue. In other words, a program, an initiative, a plan for the plan, anything that had to do where we were trying to work on one of those words that you just saw. And I would run back to my office, or I'd get up from my desk at Versailles Futures, and I'd put another sticky pad up with a name and something that they're doing, and I'd put another one up there, and pretty soon I bought a whiteboard, and I put a whiteboard in my office, and I'd start writing about a program that was being done here, and a person that was working there. And then it got to be so many pieces of paper, I couldn't even keep it up all on the wall. And then I found this amazing thing called Idea Paint. Has anybody ever heard of Idea Paint? It's whiteboard paint. You can literally paint all your walls in any room that you own with whiteboard paint, and so everything becomes a whiteboard paint. So just in behavioral mental health, over the course of 2 months, I ended up with a room full of dots. And then I had to start thinking about the dots. And I stepped back. And I started trying to figure out, well, then, okay, so if we have all these dots, and we have such a great need, now what? How are these dots connected? And it occurred to me that one of the things that you always have to be able to do is to step back and look at all these dots. And so I started thinking about the thing that I really enjoyed as a kid, and something I was really good at, and the way that I have dared to endeavor in everything I have ever done, and that is, oops, hopefully we can get it back. All right, here we go, sorry. And that's to play Connect the Dots. So I'm the daughter of very entrepreneurial Cuban immigrant parents who had very strange hours, worked in really strange places, and I have this amazing older sister named Diana. So the DI is Diana, and the DO is me. And so one of the best things you can do for kids, very cheaply in any space, is to grab a piece of paper and start drawing dots. And so here's what Diana and I would do. We would just draw dots all over the place on a piece of paper, and then we start connecting them. And playing this game taught me a lot of things. It taught me about the fact that you can have all these random dots, and that some of them get filled in pretty well, and that some of them are not filled in as well, but that there is a strategy to how you should connect the dots. And then at first, all these random dots, you start off with kind of putting a line here and a line there, but that you can also have some good strategies for how you should connect these dots. And that there are things sometimes that require you to do things like sacrifice a line. You actually have to wait and let your opponent put a line in there so that you can actually capitalize on it and just fill in a whole bunch of box. So clearly Diana's not here today, and so I always won this game. All right? Diana's no slacker. She's a lawyer, so she's kind of good at this too. But I always won this game with Diana, and I've played this game a lot and with my own children. I also thought about the other connected dots that I love, and one of those are, the easy ones are when it has a number, so you've counted all your dots, and so now you know how to connect the dots, and you get this beautiful picture. The thing is that somehow, when someone else has connected the dots for you, you might have a tendency not to uncover unique dots that are out in the community. Something else that's going on out there that you should be checking about, that you should be thinking about. And so that is important to have the ones that are connected and counted, and that's one of the things we try to do at Versailles Futures. But it's important to keep looking always for more dots. The other thing that I learned is that that makes it way too easy to just connect all the lines, because you're kind of following someone else's way of connecting all the lines and getting the pictures. And that maybe there might be other ways to draw these lines, and that you need to be thinking about those lines. So here I am again thinking, oh well, okay, so how does this work with community work? And at Versailles Futures, we stepped back from it a little bit and we started thinking, wait, maybe there's a better way to do this. And I believe that if I had a really great idea, somehow somebody else has done it somewhere better than I have. So we were thinking about, okay, dots, mapping, social mapping, you know, they've done it. They figured out like how Bill Gates is connected to everything on the planet. Certainly somebody has done this for a community. Somebody has figured out how you put all the dots of what we're doing to try to solve a problem in a community, and someone's figured out how those lines can just show up. And the thing is that I and my colleagues at Foresight Futures found out that nobody had done that. So we started thinking about our own way to have a connect the dots that would help our community be able to really step back and look at what we're doing. That's also part of something big that we do, which is we've been trying to help our community on this campaign that we say step back to step up. Here's what happens to us. Sometimes when we have a big issue and we have a lot of dots, instead of kind of thinking through the dots, we have a tendency to just keep making more dots. We want to step up, and so we make more dots and more dots and more dots, and pretty soon we have a lot of dots. This is a sandbox or an initiative. This is a landscape of initiatives. This is what we call it. And this is not a very big one, believe it or not. These are all the people in our community in some way, shape, or form who are trying to help advocate on behalf of children and families who have disabilities. Not a very big one. But we have some that have hundreds, like I told you in mental health. So we created this initiative system. And then we decided, okay, you got to be able to look about how are these things all connected. There's a tendency in the world of nonprofit, or even in the world of working together with profits or for-profit or nonprofit organizations, about thinking about that somehow everybody's a partner, right? So you'll look somebody up and you'll see what they're doing, and you have this whole list of partners. Everybody's a partner. In our thinking is, well, we got to think a little deeper about exactly what do they mean by a partner. Is this somebody that just is kind of affiliated with them? Is this someone that funds them? And so we started thinking about all the possible ways that these relationships are happening. Are these kind of dots maybe connected because they have the same mission? Are they connected once in a while because they might have the same board members? How are these dots connected? And we were able to come up with a system that also speaks to whether it was a nonprofit, a government entity, which kind of structure did this dot have, because the structure has implications. So then, this is what happens. When you start making all the relationships, it's a little messy. So sometimes what we figured out is that what is hard and what is challenging about it is not that we're not all passionate about the same thing or that we're working on the same thing, and that even maybe we are connected. It's just that there's so many of us and that we're connected for different reasons and in different ways. And that sometimes really what is the biggest dot, the thing that has the most relationships, may not necessarily be the biggest organization or the most funded organization. Maybe the biggest dot is something else. It's connected because of its position in the community. It's connected because it's got a governmental regulation function, but maybe there's a different way. And so we started figuring out ways that you could eliminate how these things are connected. And you can end up with things like this. So one of the things that we started thinking about as well was, well, this is an opportunity. If that yellow dot, which represents actually in this sandbox a for-profit company, has the most connections, and we need to be thinking about a new way to address this problem, would it make sense to just start with that big dot and have it spread out to everybody else? After all, they have the most connections. Another thing that we got to thinking about are dots. Okay, so we figured out maybe there's a way to look at this from relationships, and relationships are the important part here that we had never seen before. Maybe there's a different way to think about this. And so we got to the point where we were thinking, well, maybe we could bring them together, sort of like Diana and I used to do. And if you think about it, this is how coalitions are formed. But it requires that you step back and look at what would bring these together. And this idea is really taking on in Forsyth County. We are at the point now as a community that we're not asking anymore, we're not screaming, what are we doing? We're kind of saying, who's doing what and how are they doing it? And what would be the attraction? What would be the magnet? What would be the thing that would be a win-win to bring them together? It is not Forsyth Futures' place or anyone's place to say that anybody should not be working towards this issue. but that maybe we need to step back a little bit and think about how we could do this better, how we could step back and give each other permission to step back so that we can step up so much better. Another thing that I started thinking about was, you've seen this before. This is the 9-dot puzzle. It's famous, it's very famous in business circles. And one of the things that we noticed is that another way that we have to look at our dots is that maybe they have to be connected in different ways. This puzzle is predicated on the fact that you have to find a way to connect all the dots without having to lift your pencil, and you need to do it with a couple of different strokes. First, it was just 4 lines. Some folks didn't like that. Then they kind of made it a little more challenging. It needs to be 2 lines. But the bottom line is this is all about connecting the dots in some way where you're thinking outside of the box. Maybe it can all be connected by 1 continuous line or by 3 lines. So here's another way that we've been thinking. Maybe there's a way, not just for us, but for everyone in our community, to be thinking a way to step back before they step up. To be thinking about a way that there's a win-win for how we get together. That maybe my dream has just a little bit of a tweak to what someone else is doing that would make our solution, or to get closer to our solution, that much faster. That would align our resources. That would allow us to leverage our resources. I'm not saying we don't need to start one more thing, but I am saying we need to think about it before we do it. And that the greatest homework that we're doing in our community now is stepping back. Our foundations are asking people to step back and say, if you have a dream, we're with you, man, but step back and tell me who else is in the sandbox. What could we do together? What could we leverage? You have to look at the dots. You have to evaluate the dots. You have to assess the lines. Once in a while, we have to have the courage to help each other merge some dots. And once in a while, to really solve these situations, we need to be able to maybe let go of a dot. Now, the last thing I learned from doing all of this work is that you remember that Diana and I would take credit on who gets what? And I realized that in order to do this really, really well, you shouldn't have to take credit of who gets which box. To connect all of these boxes and to do this well and to make real community change happen better, faster, smarter, with the resources we have, requires that we not worry so much about who gets the credit so that we all get the win. Thank you.